With Final Destination Bloodlines coming out next week, I asked myself, why have I never seen a single one of these movies? Yeah, you did hear that correctly. I actually hadn't seen a single one of these movies until literally 2 weeks before the sixth movie was supposed to come out, and I'm just kind of getting into it because I asked my wife if she wanted to go see the movie in theaters, which she said I have to watch every single one of them. So if you want to thank anyone for this review, thank my wife because she was the one who kind of pushed me to do this review in the first place. Maybe the reason that I didn't even watch these movies was because I drifted towards slasher movies when I was younger, but because I'm getting older, I'm getting more and more into supernatural horror as I'm trying to find like excuses or ways out of cheating death, and I think Final Destination is just that. With that in mind, these are my thoughts as to what I think about Final Destination as a franchise, as we'll talk about every single movie in sequential order. And of course, because I watched this with my wife, she was obviously bursting out laughing because she knew about every single death that was about to happen in these films. This made it a pretty enjoyable experience overall, and I think this is why I kind of love these movies a little bit more as well, because I had a good experience watching them with my wife. Without further ado though, let's talk about Final Destination 1. Final Destination was released in 2000 and was actually supposed to be an X-Files episode that was made into this full-length feature film. The film was directed by James Wong, who may be infamously remembered for directing the heresy that is Dragon Ball Evolution. Looking at the work that Wong had done before going into this film, I was actually really scared that this movie was going to suck hot ass, which I'm glad to say was not the case, as Final Destination 1 was actually a blast and opens up on Alex Browning, who is a senior in high school who's about to graduate and going on a senior trip to Paris with all of his friends and classmates. Despite never seeing this movie, I kind of knew what the general premise for Final Destination was, and I just immediately had gotten the kind of sense of where we were going with this flight. From the very beginning of this series, they establish a formula where they will show most of the characters of the story, giving little pieces of dialogue to establish them and kind of these backstories that we have for them. You have your typical jock characters and archetypes from the early 2000s, which I have to say have not lost its touch. Without knowing what exactly is going to come, there are subtle hints to the viewer that there's something drastically wrong and that this flight will not reach its, well, final destination. Wait a minute, like the title. Before the flight takes off, Alex has a premonition that something will go wrong on it. I really love the premise of this, as we can still see some solid death sequences through these visions, because it would have been pretty easy to just phone it in and just briefly show the vision of like a pipe leaking, but they actually went through the effort of simulating a plane crash, and these death scenes are pretty impressive to make it stand out. Alex tries to get off the plane, and his high school rival, Carter, starts a fight with Alex. Carter's girlfriend, Terry, Alex's best friend Todd, and their teacher, Valerie, all try to stop this fight, which then gets them all removed from the flight. As well as, wait a minute, is that Stifler? This took me out as soon as I saw this, having seen Sean William Scott, who plays an aloof character named Billy.
See, I was in the bathroom and the lock, it was stuck, and oh wait, I didn't fight with anyone. Damn.
The last and final person to get off the plane is Clear, and she isn't kicked off but instead leaves willingly as she believes in Alex's vision. I like the subtle decision to show the plane taking off in the background, in addition to showing it exploding in the far distance as Alex argues with Carter again. It's a nice little touch that harkens back to my original point, which is they could have just done this in the first place and just not shown that death sequence in general. It is important to also talk about how Final Destination was released in 2000, which has a certain event that takes place just a year after it. The movie Shrek was released in theaters. Speaking of Shrek, one of the two FBI agents that interrogates the survivors of this Flight 180 is named just that. Talk about some poor timing on that name. He and his partner try to find out just how Alex knew the flight would crash. I kind of love the fact that everybody just doesn't kind of feel comfortable being around Alex anymore. Just look at how they're seeing and kind of side-eyeing him in this perspective. We then have a time skip where we see the collateral damage from the tragedy, with the survivors attending a memorial service for the victims. Here we see the fallout of Alex and his best friend Todd, as a result of Todd's brother dying in the explosion. I also really love how the initial tone of the film is going about this celebration of students about to enter the world and go off to college, with this senior trip being one of the highlights of the most pivotal years of their life. and how this tone massively changes, and now these survivors have to come to terms with how death can come knocking at any time. Having cheated death, the literal entity itself then proceeds to claim the lives of all of the survivors from Flight 180. Alex sees a premonition that suggests the death of his best friend Todd, and he runs to his house to try to intervene. Unfortunately for Todd and Alex, he's unable to save him from this very first death. I think they do a fantastic job at showing how death can happen at any time and that it is inevitable, albeit that some of these deaths are sometimes a little too silly. Alex and Clear suspect that something is amiss, and they go to the morgue to try and examine Todd's body. Here we are introduced to a mortician named William Bloodworth, who is played by the late Tony Todd. It should be noted that despite only having about 4 minutes of screen time, Tony Todd's impact is instantly felt. They give insight as to how the entity may behave, as this kind of all-knowing deity themselves. Bloodworth says that death is now claiming the lives of those who are supposed to die in the explosion, with Alex having disrupted Death's plans. And I want to take a moment to just kind of highlight this line read from Tony Todd, as you can see how menacing and provoking he can be as this kind of deity.
I'll see you soon.
After meeting with Bloodworth, Alex and Clear try to identify what exactly they should do next, as all of the survivors suddenly arrive and coincidentally meet in the same exact place. And at this point, I thought that Carter was about to accidentally kill Billy here, but it wasn't in fact the case. But because of this fake out, I love it, and it's a little touch that just makes you think that someone is going to die, but you don't know who exactly will go. Something that plays to the strength of this film is the fact that death strikes in any kind of capacity or time. It could be broad daylight and you could just get claimed by the entity that is death. Carter and Alex get into a fight once again, and Terry says this.
Then you can just drop fucking dead.
Wow, okay. I mean, you knew that someone was going to die at this point because you saw the vision of the bus, but this is not what I expected at this point in time. Alex returns home and watches a news report where he realizes that there is a method to this madness. He correctly deduces that this sequence is some part of Death's larger plans, saying that it's Death's design, as the remaining survivors are being claimed in order of who died in the plane crash. Alex tries to save Valerie, who calls Agent Wine and Shrek, who put him into custody and they interrogate him. That is before they both let him go, and Alex sees a sign about Val Luden's death, but she goes out in what is probably the most absurd deaths in these films, as her computer is fried and a piece of the exploding computer cuts her throat open. Now, you might be thinking, why is that the most absurd death? Well, it's not the fact that she gets her throat cut open by a piece of shrapnel from this computer. She actually dies in a different way. As this sequence kind of unfolds, a different kind of sequence with gas in the house lighting a fire with the alcohol bottle, which is another subtle touch that shows how Valerie has been dealing with the tragedies. But you may think, oh, surely she dies here then, with the house on fire. Well, you'd probably be wrong again. I mean, I was too. Even then, she's trying to cover up the wound and grabs at a rag that's covering up a knife block. And Jesus Christ, the knife block is going to go into her, isn't it? Okay, she's dead now, right? It's done? It's over with? Well, apparently not, as Alex arrives just in time as the oven explodes and a chair drops down on top of the knife and plunges the knife deeper into her stomach. Now, what do you think that Alex does when he sees this happen? Well, of course, he stupidly grabs the knife and removes it, putting his fingerprints all over it. This then prompts one of my favorite scenes of this movie and probably one of my favorite gifs to use at this point in time.
Hey, Alex.
But again, can we just kind of talk about how overkill that was? Like, Val Luden got absolutely slapped by death. I gotta say, it's pretty entertaining though. The remaining 4 survivors drive around in Carter's car, with the FBI now trying to arrest Alex for the murder of Val Luden. Carter now finally believes Alex, but states that they control their own fate as they drive around in a manic state before parking their car on a railroad track. An oncoming train can be seen in the distance, with Alex, Clear, and Billy able to escape the car, but Carter is obviously stuck. We think this is the end for him, but Alex saves him, which sees the car explode on the tracks and then skip over him. In an age of CGI, it is refreshing to see a bunch of practical effects, as you can feel the weight of the explosion. Billy starts to lay into Carter, and rightfully so, before a piece of the car shrapnel is kicked up by the inertia of the train passing by and decapitates him. because Alex saved Carter, that was able to skip over him, and then it went on to Billy almost immediately, which made sense because of how the explosion would have claimed the lives of these people rather quickly, so it didn't have to be that short of a distance in between these deaths. Alex and Clear caress each other as Carter just says this.
Hey, why don't you two just get the fuck out of here?
Alex has made sure to hide in a cabin that he's ensured is somewhat safe, with him being hypervigilant about every little thing.
Tried to capitalize, but I caught you. You fuck.
Alex then realizes that he got the order wrong. He goes to try and save her with Agent Shrek and authorities following him. In this resolution, I love how the light bulbs and electronic appliances spark around Clear. Clear is now trapped inside a car as Death tries to take her, but Alex offers himself up, grabbing the cable that electrocutes him but allows Clear to escape. Surprisingly, Alex lives through this, and he heads off to Paris with Clear and Carter as they try to honor the memory of all the people that they had lost. It is here where our peaceful resolution is taken from us, with Carter pushes Alex out of the way and you think that everything's okay until this.
So who's next?
In addition, the first thing we ever see in this scene is the sign, which pans down from it to Clear, Carter, and Alex. I honestly really love this film, and it has some pacing issues in the third act, but I don't really care for it because it's such an action-packed kind of sequence that you are kind of just going to overlook it. Every death is different than the last, with the absurdity being played up at certain points and played down in others, which makes it a pretty prominent horror comedy. For that reason, I can definitely see why people love this franchise. I also really quickly want to circle back to probably my favorite joke of the film before we kind of move on.
You know, because of you, I gotta sit here and watch fucking Stuart Little.
What the fuck do you have against Stuart Little? He's a goddamn national treasure. You do not disrespect that tiny mouse. A little piece of trivia is that Jeffrey Riddick, the writer for this film, and his writing partner of James Wong actually envisioned Kirsten Dunst and Tobey Maguire as the stars of the film, which I think wouldn't have had the same impact, as Ali Larter and Devon Sawa do an amazing job in their roles. Sean William Scott was coming off the success of American Pie and was a really impressive casting at the time, as his stardom was at its highest. The movie was a box office success, which prompted a sequel being greenlit. Final Destination 2 was released in 2003 and directed by the late David Ellis. You may recall Ellis's name, as they were also the director for the film Snakes on a Plane, which just gave us this gem of a moment.
I have had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane.
The film stars AJ Cook as Kimberly. She is most known for her role as JJ in Criminal Minds. Ali Larter also returns as Clear. A year after Flight 180 crashes in Final Destination, Kimberly and her friends are driving down the highway for spring break. This sequence is more intriguing than the first one, with more development, and they use it to show off all the characters that will be the focal points of this movie. Each character gets shown for that slight moment with some kind of character development. This line read from the stoner character is pretty fucking funny.
Dude, look at those titties!
This setup with the logs on the truck supposedly traumatized a whole generation, and I can definitely see why. The deaths here are visceral, pretty much more than the ones that we saw in the first film, as we get a lot more greater depth in these deaths. The way that Kimberly does go out with a giant truck barreling towards her is also pretty fucking funny. After the premonition, Kimberly decides to park her car on the road and block everyone so they cannot get on the highway. Officer Burke interviews all the survivors at the police station, and one of the survivors here, named Eugene, mentions the events of the first movie. After they all leave, we watch lottery winner Evan accidentally start a fire in his house. This is one of the more anxiety-inducing kills, as there's so many little teases and fake-outs, only for Evan to die as a result of him throwing out his spaghetti out the window and slipping on it as a ladder impales his head. Kimberly then goes to meet with Clear at a psychiatric ward, who had willingly institutionalized herself after Alex had died. Clear tells Kimberly how to try and fight against death, saying that she couldn't beat it. After doing this, Kimberly sees a premonition regarding Tim and Nora with pigeons. What this kid says, in fact, for even 2003 is so out of pocket, I just couldn't help but laugh.
If he gives me the gas and I wake up with my pants unbuttoned, we ain't paying.
In a nice piece of foreshadowing, we see exactly how Tim actually dies. The fake outs with the pigeons and in general get several laughs out of me. Just look at the assistant's face here, it's kind of perfection.
Jane, how's Tim doing in there?
Kimberly and Burke warn Tim and Nora about the pigeons, to which he goes and then kicks them away, before getting absolutely flattened by the glass pane that we saw before while he was in the dentist's chair. Clear has decided that she has to try and help Kimberly and the others defeat death, so they all go to meet with Bloodworth. Tony Todd is once again phenomenal here, with this scene in the crematorium kind of just peak fiction. His delivery is mysteriously all-knowing, but still somewhat sincere. Only after Kimberly essentially begs Bloodworth that he says that only new life can defeat death. And how can you not love this performance here?
How do you know my name?
Not getting exactly what Bloodworth was trying to say, they pump gas somewhat defeated. Clear sees some signs of a disaster at the gas station as Kimberly sees a premonition of someone drowning. Here they deduce that they need to find the pregnant woman and keep her safe. All the survivors of the crash meet up to discuss how they need to save the pregnant woman and ensure that she gives birth so they can cheat Death's list. Here, Clear then decides to prep the survivors, saying that they can see all the signs. But just listen to how Eugene talks here.
Darling, my ass is alive, huh? Has been all day.
His ignorance has Death nearly decapitate Claire with a kayak after a mousetrap launches a pool ball and it swings towards her. The pregnant woman is stopped by the police, who say that she had her vehicle reported as stolen. Eugene and Nora enter the elevator together, and Rory sees a sign about a man with hooks, who we just saw in the elevator as well with Eugene and Nora. Burke warns Nora about the man with hooks, and her hair is inevitably caught by that hook. In a state of panic, she tries to run out of the elevator, with her head getting immediately caught in between the doors, something that was foreshadowed previously with Rory. The survivors drive to go meet with the pregnant lady, but she's released from protective custody as her water breaks and she demands to go to a hospital. Whilst the survivors drive together, they realize that they all survived the accident on the highway due to a series of connected accidents that they avoided as a result of Flight 180. This plot twist is pretty much amazing, as it reveals that every single survivor here has a direct connection to Flight 180. Their car swerves out of control and crashes, with a set of PVC pipes penetrating the car, with the driver named Kat being pinned down and unable to move. However, nobody dies here, it's just a really nice fake out. Coincidentally, the deputy driving the pregnant lady is kind of next to this crash and spots it, and she tells him not to help and keep driving. Eugene has a punctured lung and has to be wheeled off to the hospital, whereas Rory, a stoner who has thrown his life away, has some kind of character development, with them saving this kid here from an oncoming news van. Firefighters try to save Kat with the jaws of life, which accidentally activates the airbag and plunges her head into the PVC pipe behind her. Dude, just as I was praising Rory, they have to go and kill him. Rip Rory. Kimberly, Clear, and Burke go to the hospital to try and save the pregnant woman who is now in labor. The movie continues to tease us, stating that the baby has the umbilical cord wrapped around its neck. It doesn't result in much anyways though, with the baby being born, and the three of them thinking that they are now safe. Unfortunately for them all, Kimberly has another premonition that reveals that the pregnant woman was never even supposed to die in the pileup, as Clear goes to Eugene, and when she opens the door, she is charred to a crisp by the ensuing explosion. Kimberly then realizes that the premonition that she's been having is actually her own death, so she willingly drowns herself before being saved by Burke and revived by a nurse at the hospital. We get our sweet resolution with everyone thinking it's all okay and Kimberly and Burke having a nice picnic barbecue. The parents reveal that their son was actually nearly hit by the news van, with them being saved by Rory. As soon as Kimberly and Burke realize what's about to happen, the sun explodes because of the malfunctioning barbecue grill. It's important to note that we don't see Kimberly or Burke die here, so hopefully we see them at some point in Bloodlines. While Final Destination 2 keeps with the quality of the first one, I find myself teeter-tottering on which one I like more. While writing this review, I thought that Final Destination 2 was better than the first one, but now that I'm recording the audio, I actually think that the second and first one are pretty much on par with one another. Final Destination 3 was released in 2006 and sees the return of James Wong in the director's chair. This is my favorite setup of the series, as I'm deathly afraid of roller coasters. Pun intended. It stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who had just been in The Ring 2 and Sky High. Yeah, talk about two very different tones It is important to note that the writing partner of Wong for this film, Glenn Morgan, would go on to write and direct the film Black Christmas, with Winstead starring in it. Black Christmas was a remake of the 1974 film that was an original classic, so I think that if we are somehow able to get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll review both the 1974 one and the remake. I love everything about this carnival, with all of these high school students celebrating their graduation at an amusement park. It goes back to that formula that worked very well in Final Destination 1, which was using characters that are just now entering their adult life. Something that Final Destination 2 deviated away from, which could cause a minor disconnect between the audience and the characters. Wong nails these characters to perfection, with all of these archetypes having solid character work within the 93 minutes that they do have to work with. I also love these lines that they inserted about death in general, with these kind of sayings being taken pretty literally and figuratively at this point in time.
If we miss that and stand in line for like a day and a half, and that's gonna kill me.
No, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, man.
That kind of irony I just kind of enjoy in these movies. The aptly named Devil's Flight coaster is the one that will take their life, and Winstead's character, Wendy, takes photos of her classmates for the yearbook. If anything, the thing I love most about this is the atmosphere of this carnival. It has the best setup of all of these films, and I love that when they do go to the coaster, you can hear Tony Todd's voice as the devil.
You may never return from Devil's Flight.
I also adore the goth characters of Ian and Aaron in this film that get introduced while they are in line for the ride. We get teased as the roller coaster gets sent, with the attendant telling Kevin to put the camera away, which Frankie hears and hides his camcorder before pulling it back out. I love the way this setup feels, with the viewer actually feeling like we're on the coaster. It builds a sense of dread that none of the other Final Destination setups can really match up to. A perving Frankie Cheeks is trying to catch a nip slip of these two girls in front of him and has his camcorder swatted away. It falls and wraps around the eroded tracks of the coaster, and as the cars go along it, it causes the hydraulics that secures the restraints in the train cars to malfunction. The entire ride starts to come undone now, with the wheels sparking and flying off. This sees several people fly out of their seats, while others try to hold on for dear life and plummet to their death. The mix of practically shooting this scene and the 3D CGI still holds up alright at most points. Then there are other effects that clearly haven't aged well. Wendy and Kevin are the last two to survive, as he somehow manages to push the coaster back as it hangs in suspense upside down. Wendy comes back from the premonition and panics before getting off the coaster with 8 other passengers. Her boyfriend tries to get off, but the person controlling the roller coaster is peer pressured into sending the car, where Wendy watches as her boyfriend rides off to his death. What does confuse me here is that if Frankie Cheeks is not on this ride, how does this roller coaster exactly crash? Is it just because of the malfunctioning eroding of the tracks, or does something else happen to make it happen? Because the camcorder isn't there anymore. I don't know, I'm probably looking way too much into that in that perspective, but that's kind of something I want to know. We see the first 2 people who are claimed by death in what ends up being the most gruesome death in the series. This foreshadowing is right on the nose, and I can't just help but laugh at it.
A few degrees won't hurt.
I also love that the song that plays is about a roller coaster, which they were supposed to die in. Wendy realizes how exactly these 2 girls are going to die, looking at a sign via her camera and the fact that her lamp keeps flickering over the note with the girl's phone number. I love how the glass shatters here, like their vanity being the death of them, as they're tanning in these beds. The 2 of them are charred to a crisp, and it has to be the most brutal way to go out. The transition from the 2 tanning beds to 2 coffins is probably the best shot of this entire franchise. Ian's rant at the memorial is also very solid, and it just kind of highlights the inequality about life and death. Wendy finally realizes that she's getting premonitions through the photos that she took at the carnival. I think this is the most innovative thing that they do in the franchise, as they try to deviate away from something that is just solid in a formulaic setting, but try to have Wendy and Kevin try to decipher what's going on in these photos, which is a really cool touch. Wait a goddamn minute, they did just mention September 2001 as a Final Destination moment?
Yo, holy shit, he dead!
Wendy and Kevin pull into a drive-thru and look at the photo for Frankie. They're unable to figure out just exactly how he's going to die. While they sit in the drive-thru, you can spot a truck in the background that is the same one that Kimberly saw in Final Destination 2. It's another nice little cameo that builds on that continuity. Wendy then realizes that they're in danger as a song on the radio plays saying that there is someone behind them.
There is someone walking behind.
A semi-truck barrels down the hill and nearly plows into them. They're able to escape, but the truck's engine bursts through the hood and strikes Frankie, slicing his skull open. Wendy and Kevin then try to save Lewis, a jock who is lifting weights, and the build-up for this kill is probably the best of this film, as they tease you before 2 weights from the machine come down on his head and crush him. Ian and Aaron are next on death's list, so Wendy and Kevin try to save them as Ian mocks death. That is until Wendy saves Ian, which sets forth a chain reaction that skips him and goes to Aaron, who falls on a nail gun and is impaled by the nails repeatedly. On first watch, I was kind of confused as to why they would skip over Ian so quickly and then go straight to Aaron, but they just kind of tell you this a little bit before we actually see Aaron die, so just listen to this.
Well, we know the order of how we were sitting on the roller coaster, but not how it works with people who sat together.
Little tidbits like that, and seeing how Ian fell a few seconds before Aaron is just what makes this film well-rounded. Also note how Ian looks and stalks at Wendy here, an important piece of information for later. This third act is probably the second worst of the entire franchise, as it just has too many sheer coincidences, with Kevin just so happening to be working at the exact fair that Wendy's sister is already at. I understand it's a plot device and we're talking about a supernatural death phenomenon, but come on, it's a little lazy. Kevin saves Wendy's sister, Julie, but a flagpole then fatally impales Julie's friend. Everything about this whole sequence is just kind of mid though, except for Kevin getting kicked by a horse. Wendy then saves Kevin from a propane canister that explodes, but they are then confronted by Ian, who now wants to kill Wendy as he blames her for Aaron's death. Ian's actor probably has the best line of the film.
Hey, I'm just celebrating our town's tricentennial.
It is only here and now where Ian realizes that he's responsible for Wendy's death, and in trying to kill Wendy, he actually saves her, with a cherry picker falling onto him instead and crushing him. As with all of these movies, these resolutions suggest that everything is now okay. Here, Wendy hears the song that she heard that Death used to torment her before, and she realizes that she didn't exactly escape. I think this is my second favorite resolution scene. We also hear Tony Todd as the conductor as they are in this scene as that voice.
The next stop is the end of the line.
Right before Wendy gets off, she coincidentally sees her sister Julie and stays on the train.
What are you doing here?
Listen, I understand that you need to have everybody in the same place to have this resolution, but as William Bloodworth says, death does not have any accidents. There are no redos or mess-ups. They go through the effort of showing the entire premonition and then showing how they're helpless to stop it, with the train then crashing and killing the 3 of them. Final Destination 3 was the last of the trilogy, and it was kind of confusing to not see Kimberly or Burke, but it was just kind of inferred that Wong wanted to have new characters for this film. While a solid addition to this franchise, it's somewhat underneath Final Destination 1 and 2, as the pacing of this movie is drastically worse, but it has the best setups and deaths of the franchise. Final Destination 4, otherwise known as The Final Destination, was greenlit after the commercial success of Final Destination 3. It was released in 2009 and saw the director of David R. Ellis from Final Destination 2. When I saw that David Ellis was responsible for this film, I thought, oh my god, this could be a good movie, just like Final Destination 2, and a lot of people liked Final Destination 2, so it could be pretty solid. Boy, was I wrong. I did not like this movie. I'm gonna get this out of the way. I think that making a Final Destination movie as a 3D one was probably a terrible idea. I understand that it was made in an era where 3D films were all the craze, but the effects for this film are specifically designed for that medium, and it looks terrible. Watching the film without a 3D TV or in a normal format just means that it's super visually unappealing. That is certainly the case here, with the visual effects and general cinematography for this movie being the worst of the entire franchise. Additionally, the plot and the acting of this film are not great either, and it is definitely the worst of the franchise as well. All in all, it's probably just best if you skip this film, and it's kind of good that it doesn't really have anything canonically strong in this film, because otherwise it would just be kind of a stain on this franchise's reputation. So you could just kind of forget that this movie even happens, and it doesn't really impact the story at all. Despite that, here's what Final Destination 4 is about. Nick and his girlfriend Lori go to watch a race car race with their friends Hunt and Janet during summer break. This setup is interesting enough to kind of hook me, and I had verbally said to my wife I was kind of excited to see it. How wrong I was. Nick has a premonition that shows the entire speedway collapsing. He tries to escape, which has a similar result as Final Destination 1, with the confrontation pulling several people along with them and saving their lives. This looks a lot less like Final Destination and more like Looney Tunes. Additionally, none of these characters are really all that memorable, and a flying tire comes down and decapitates this mechanic's wife, like in the premonition as well. Unironically, the best part of this film is the intro, where they show all the previous deaths from the franchise with this X-ray vision style reenactment. As with all of these films, of course there's a memorial, so we watch as this racist calls George the N-word.
Hey, there's no need for that, man.
Back off, you fucking freak.
Later that night, the racist goes to George's house, where he tries to set up a cross and burn it. Yeah, that's not where I thought this film was going to go in the big 2009, after we got our first black president. The racist has obviously been drinking, something that's contrasted with George, who is in Alcoholics Anonymous. Also, this is the same beer brand that they've used in Final Destination 2 and 3, so at least there's that little nod here. Okay, and I guess my actual favorite part of the film is Death tormenting this racist. Of course, they don't show a burning cross, thankfully. Instead, they have the racist get caught by the chain and it drags him behind the truck. Before, ironically, the chain strikes a fire and he's burned alive and then explodes. If the effects were better here, it would probably be my favorite death of the series, but you can just tell how fake this kind of looks right here. Even they know how silly this is, with them showing a cartoon with a character on fire. The next one to be targeted is this mother, Samantha, who is trying to get a haircut. In terms of building up suspense, this is probably the best one of this movie, as it relies the least on the 3D, but even the way they shoot it is just kind of paling in comparison to previous installments. They slow burn this kill, thinking that someone in the salon will be her demise, only for this to happen.
I've got my eye on you two.
Okay, I mean, fair enough, it's a pretty solid kill, and I just love the fact that the guy on the lawnmower just keeps driving like nothing happened. After learning of Samantha's death, Nick is convinced that they're in a similar situation to those of Flight 180. Nick then sees a premonition that relates to Clear from Final Destination 1. Yeah, so Lorena knew immediately what was going to happen here, and this is probably the most infamous death of this entire franchise. Firstly, Hunt pops this kid's floaty and steals his water gun off of him after he sprays his phone and kind of short circuits it. Secondly, Janet is in danger because she's in a car wash. And no, you did not hear that incorrectly. It's literally the premise of this death. I don't understand how we decided on a potential death being set in a car wash, but just seriously, how? Janet is saved by George and Lori after they plow their car into hers, and they pull her out of the sunroof to save her from drowning. As for Hunt, Nick is too late to save him, as we see his intestines come out the drain pipe. This is probably the best character development from the film, which doesn't say much because they just show that George is struggling with his alcoholism and putting his AA coin as he's trying to prevent himself from drinking. Nick and Lori think that George is in danger and they find him hanging from the ceiling, but he's just kind of there, which, come on, I guess they don't know the rule, but fuck. Also, what was the point of having this cork being popped off as a 3D effect? I just don't understand. I guess they thought that maybe they had gone 3 minutes without a 3D effect and couldn't label it a 3D movie if there wasn't just excessive 3D effects. They all celebrate their new life with some apple cider until Nick realizes that another spectator of the Speedway accident had survived. I know I'm going to say it a couple of times, but no, this is probably the most ridiculous kill of the franchise. Additionally, Nick and George just talk about how he tried to unalive himself in front of all these medical personnel, like they're not going to do anything.
That's why you couldn't kill yourself.
And then this overflowed bathtub just comes down and crushes this cowboy. Like, what is with all the water kills in this movie? A few short minutes later, an ambulance strikes and kills George. Nick rushes to the movie theater to save Janet and Lori, with Janet getting killed by the explosion, before Lori is slowly minced by an escalator, with Nick then coming back from this premonition. Nick, Janet, and Lori are all sitting at a cafe after Nick somehow stops this explosion, and they think that they have beaten death, which obviously isn't the case, as a truck swerves and crashes into the cafe and kills all three of them. This movie is a clusterfuck of bad effects and acting, and it's undoubtedly the worst of the franchise. I would be remiss if somebody actually said that this was their favorite film of the franchise. Seriously, please tell me if you do, so I can just kind of ignore your opinions on things. Or at the very least, just tell me why. I really want to know why someone would like this movie. Also, additionally, there's no Tony Todd cameo in this film. Like, this movie, fuck it. It's not even a Final Destination movie. Like, the Final Destination were like the biggest piece of shit I've watched in like 6 years. Moving on though, Final Destination 5 was released in late 2011 and was directed by Stephen Quayle. The film stars Nicholas D'Agosto as Sam, and they may look familiar to you as they actually portrayed Harvey Dent in the show Gotham. It is very much an ensemble cast, but everyone in this film does their very best, and I think that can be attested to the direction as they got the best of their actors. Starting off the film, we see how Sam is underperforming at work, and holy hell, his boss looks a lot like if Dave Franco and Tom Cruise just kind of fused together. After getting scolded by Peter, Sam then gets broken up with by his girlfriend. Jesus, I know we've seen some fucked up things, but this guy can't catch a break here. We are then introduced to all of our other characters throughout the next 5 minutes, similar to how the franchise does before every disaster occurs. Sam and his co-workers hop on the bus and head to their work retreat, and while on the way to the bridge, they see a logging truck, a little tip of the cap to Final Destination 2. An additional tip of the cap is done to Final Destination 1, with the training video being done by a corporation with the number 180 in it as well, with the same number being incorporated with Flight 180. The bus stops due to construction on the bridge, and Sam has a premonition about it collapsing. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really like the idea of the bridge being this kind of setup, and I was definitely wrong with this. My wife said that this was her favorite and is her favorite Final Destination film, so I kind of was going into it like, maybe it's good. If my wife says it's good, it's probably good. Yeah, it's definitely good. It's not my favorite setup, with Final Destination 3 still being the top one for me, but Final Destination 5 is a very close second. After the collapse, he's interrogated by an FBI agent named Jim Block, and I like that it's kind of mirroring that, showing that people aren't agreeing and believing him initially. Like, they have to have some realistic, doubts about this kind of premonition or something. After being questioned, he goes to the memorial where the other survivors also question how he knew, and of course there's a memorial scene because this is a Final Destination movie. I love how they show a different side to people dealing with grief, with her nervous laughing instead of crying, as well as this joke by Nathan.
I see dead people.
After the memorial, we get a cameo from Tony Todd as William Bloodworth, who says that death doesn't like to be cheated. And this is exactly what these movies needed, this ominous presence that's just toying with them.
You all, just be careful now.
Shortly after this, Peter and his girlfriend Candace are at her last college gymnastics practice. This is the best slow burn kill of the film, but all of the kills in this movie are pretty phenomenal. I'm going to be honest, they build tension rather than a quick payoff, which shows how death has operated more so in Final Destination 1 rather than any of the other later installments. And there is a reason for that, so we'll come back to that in a bit. Additionally, Candace mentioned that she likes to have her bands for good luck. The bands snap, but she doesn't see the bad omen in it and instead goes along with her practice. After a freak accident and some chalk being blown into Candace's face, she flips off the uneven bars and snaps her spine. Isaac, the scumbag, steals coins from coworkers' desks before pricking his hand on a bunch of thumbtacks. Here he finds a coupon to a spa and he goes to it and just continues to act like a total sleazebag.
I'm just trying to clarify though that this professional experience ends happy.
Before he sits down for the massage, he says that the Buddha statue should lay off the food. In addition to sexually harassing these workers, he's just generally racist, assuming that the woman doing the massage for him can't understand him. There is a little break and we see all of the co-workers drinking together, where a slight glimpse can be seen of a photo of Olivia with a friend at the Devil's Flight roller coaster. These small touches of fan service are just amazing and I love it a lot. Isaac is given an acupuncture session, and this scene plays off the same slow burn the first one did with Candace, as a sequence of unfortunate events leads to his demise. Firstly, he falls off the massage chair and has the acupuncture needles plunge into him, which if you remember, he was pricked by the thumbtacks at the office prior. This is a little foreshadowing that I love from the film. Only for him to be struck in the head and crushed by the falling Buddha statue that he mocked before. This is how you build tension. This is how you do a Final Destination kill, not whatever bullshit they were doing in Final Destination 4. Sam and his coworkers arrive at this salon to check out what's happening with Isaac, and they realize that Bloodworth is also there. In this moment, Bloodworth states that in order to cheat death, they must kill someone who is not meant to die on the bridge and claim the remaining lifespan. This rule implementation is pretty interesting, but also begs the question why we didn't see this dynamic in any of the previous 4 films. Sam and his ex-girlfriend Molly go to try to save Olivia, who has the worst death of this film and probably the second worst of the franchise, next to the tanning beds. For kill, with her just trying to get some kind of laser eye surgery to fix her eyesight, as a result of losing her glasses on the bridge like Velma Dinkley.
My glasses! I can't see without my glasses!
My glasses. I can't be seen without my glasses.
Of course, because Olivia is getting laser eye surgery, it's only natural that her death is eye related, with the laser overheating and burning out her eye. My sense of logic is just screaming at me and just asking why exactly this doctor would leave the room. Like, this is just medical malpractice, similar to the dentist in Final Destination 2. Also, the setup of the doctor moving the surgical tool to make sure Olivia's eye is in place is just nauseating. Sam and Molly arrive too late as Olivia walks backwards and falls out the window to her death. And come on, you know that driving over the eye after it popped out of her head was overkill. At the factory, Nathan accidentally kills his coworker, Roy. Peter is convinced that Nathan did this intentionally. Dennis tries to question what is going on before he's killed by a flying wrench. Sam goes back to work, and there are a series of fake-outs that I really enjoy here. Sam and Molly are finally able to talk about their relationship and rekindle that fire. Peter interrupts the date and is visibly unstable. He says that he'll kill Molly and take her life, saying that she doesn't deserve to live, but that everyone else that died on the bridge does. Peter then tries to kill Molly, but accidentally kills Block instead before a fight ensues between Peter and Sam. Sam then stabs him with a meat spit and kills him. 2 weeks later, Sam and Molly board their flight to Paris. As this was my first time watching the entire franchise, I was not ready for the big plot twist that was about to come up. And yeah, it was Flight 180 that they were taking. This was a prequel. Everything that was happening was a prequel. This is the logical explanation as to why this rule about killing people to take their lifespans could not have been introduced or wasn't in all the other films. But I don't know, it could just be Bloodworth not wanting to mention it as it's like that cheap cop-out, but at the same time, we'll talk about it in a second. It's confusing because we know that Sam killed Peter, who killed Block, so there's no remaining lifespan on Block's life. I guess the only logical thing I can think of is that Block was supposed to die as collateral damage, as we've seen in other movies, which would kind of explain why there was no remaining years on Block's lifespan and why Sam dies shortly after on Flight 180. But in addition to that, Molly also dies on Flight 180, so what happens with that? Is it because we didn't see them die on the bridge where they're probably supposed to die, but we don't see it because Sam is the one with the premonition? I don't know exactly what is here. Or at the very least, the reason that Flight 180 happens is because Molly and Sam out-cheat death, and death comes for them again even after they get the lifespan from this rule. Or it's just a lie from Bloodworth. So hopefully this is more explained in Bloodlines. Because if that's the case, then it means that the Flight 180 crash doesn't happen because of Alex and his classmates. It happens because of Sam and Molly, who are on that flight anyways, which would in turn cause a chain reaction that has death have to claim people in Final Destination 2. That would mean that the actual trilogy for this series is Final Destination 5 first, then Final Destination 1, and then Final Destination 2. Moments after learning that Roy was about to die, though, the plane crashes into the bar and kills everyone. Well, I guess that explains where all the debris landed. I love the movie entirely because it just does a fantastic job of tying itself to all of the other films as a prequel, with people not knowing what they were getting into when this movie did come out. And honestly, it's probably my favorite one of the entire series. And I really, really want to see how Bloodlines really shapes up and how it kind of connects 5 with the rest of the films. I don't know if they're going to kind of go directly with Bloodlines as a direct sequel to 4 or what they're going to do with this. But I would like to see Kimberly and Burke being back, as we haven't really seen them dead yet, and we also have the late Tony Todd coming back for one final time as Bloodworth. If you have not seen the series at all, I would recommend checking out all of the films except for the fourth one. And even then, you could probably watch the fourth one if you just smoke a lot of Zaza and just take it very unseriously. With all of this in mind and everything that I've learned in the past essentially a month, is I'm going to say that you could watch this series in two different ways. You could watch it 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and just be like, okay, whatever. Or you could watch it as 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in chronological order. Let me know what you thought about the review though, and anything I missed about these movies. I know there's a little couple of Easter eggs that I was going to actually mention, but it was just getting a little too long in this video, but I just kind of removed them. But if you haven't checked out the channel, we have other kinds of review content that we do on this channel, and please leave a like on the video if you do want to see the Black Christmas review in its entirety, or some other reviews. Leave it down below and I'll kind of check it out. I'm going to be trying to do more long form content reviews as like a once every week or once every 2 weeks, depending how long the franchise or the series I'm trying to review is. And honestly, I just want to review things that people want to see, as it's kind of more enjoyable for me to kind of review and see what people are discussing about these kinds of series and films. So just let me know down in the comments, and I've been Siren's End, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!